You ask, what do stunning coins and delicious snacks have in common?
Hi, I'm Jack McNamara, and I love stunning and rare coins. Oh, and I also love delicious and scrumptious food, too. Join me as I combine the best of numismatics and tasty treats into one show. Coin Snacks with Jack. Put down that tired bologna sandwich and spice up your lunch as I chat with some of the biggest names in numismatics and eat delicious snacks. From coin news and U.S. Mint releases to rare coins and numismatic oddities. From my all-time favorite coins to ancients and commemoratives, get your numismatic midweek pick-me-up with Coin Snacks with Jack. Plus, we'll eat snacks, lots of them.
Coin Snacks with Jack.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Coin Snacks with Jack. I'm your host, Jack McNamara, and I'm grateful I'm sitting down at a desk for this show because I'm wearing sweatpants right now. That's not true. I'm always wearing jeans. Anyway, you can catch me right here live on YouTube and Facebook streaming a new episode every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern and noon Pacific. This week's bit of numismatic news involves one of the earliest U.S. coins ever to be struck by the U.S. Mint, the flowing hair silver dollar. But this isn't any flowing hair dollar, though. What is really interesting about this coin that I want to talk about, that it wasn't struck from silver like the other dollar coins that we're used to that would have been struck in that period. In fact, this 1794 flowing hair dollar was struck from copper. It is an early pattern coin or a prototype for what later became the first official U.S. silver dollar later that year. And unlike any of the silver dollar examples, this example does not have any stars around Lady Liberty on the obverse. So it actually was struck by a different die that was not then later used for the silver dollars. Now, this coin was estimated to bring $350,000 to $500,000 at auction, but the prediction was shattered, and this coin actually sold for $840,000, which is a lot of money for a coin that probably was buried in the ground and is a little bit corroded and is not some of the gems we're used to seeing here. But it just shows how historically significant this coin is. This is the only example ever believed to be produced. There's no other mention of any of these coins. So, pretty big deal coin. So, just our interesting news here of the week. There's always something big in coins. Anyway, I just want to say thank you to everyone that gets my show on the air every week. We have Joey, Sofer, Colleen, Nate, Alex, Elliot. We have Seabass, Subtle. Thank you all, everybody. Sofer, you got to update my text, so I remember to thank everyone. A couple of those people I had to ad-lib. I'm sure I left somebody else out. But anyway, thank you all for getting the show on the air. This week, we have another lunch special for all of you as well. I can't forget. Besides talking about coins, we like to help you guys add things to your collection. So we're going to be giving you a 5% discount off of all Franklin and Kennedy half dollars in Rick Tomaska's exclusive We the People and aspirational holders. This is only going on until 3 p.m. Pacific. This is a very limited offer, so don't hesitate to check out our selection. Go to rarecollectiblestv.com or call your private advisor. And remember, there's no special code necessary for this offer. Just go to the website and pick the coin you want, and you're going to get that special discount. But it's only until 3 o'clock Pacific, 6 o'clock Eastern. So now is the moment you've all been waiting for. It is time for me to introduce our special guest. And you may have figured it out based on what our special offer is today. But if you've seen our show on television, then you will recognize this man. He is known far and wide for his contributions to the field of numismatics. He published his famous book that gave him his reputation as the Cameo King and caused the creation of the Cameo, Deep Cameo, and Ultra Cameo designations that are used by PCGS and NGC. he published a renowned book on Franklin and half dollars, and here you see the book on Franklin and Kennedy half dollars. His Franklin book birthed the full Bellline standard for the series. He was recently selected as one of the top 60 most influential numismatists. So congratulations on that one. Today, I welcome the second half of the Coin Guys, Rick Tomaska. Thanks, Rick. Thanks for coming.
Hey, Jack. Great talking to you. This is exciting. I was going to ask you if you're sitting in your boxers, but you said you're in your sweats, huh?
Yeah. Are you wearing your swim trunks there, longboard shorts, or what you got? Yeah.
Do I have my golf shoes on or something?
There you go. Well, thank you for joining.
I'm in full work here with my jeans and the usual garb that we guys wear. Interesting that 1794, because you don't know this, but I just bought a 1795 flowing hair in MS62.
Oh wow!
So
there's not too many
at Rare Collectibles. Yeah,
that's awesome. There's not too many mint state dollars from that era, as you know. Even a fine or a VG is a great coin to find from those first years.
Exactly, and the thing is, it's not like you're gonna uncover a roll of these somewhere.
No.
They don't exist.
You're lucky if you find one exactly in any grade, let alone mint state.
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting news. Well,
that
before we dig into it, Rick, I know we have a lot of great things to talk about, but I know there was one thing that was most important to you before we get started here, and that is we have to invite Colleen out to tell us what our snack is for today. So, welcome, Colleen. What do we have going on here today?
Jack, we have something really fun and exciting here for you.
Okay.
Look, I know you're going to talk about American icons. Franklin and Eisenhower and Kennedy, and so we thought we'd just sort of focus right there in the middle, and Rick's wearing his I Like Ike pin, so we went with the 50s, which is Eisenhower's era, and that really started the whole fast food industry, and fast food was thought of as pure Americana. It really, the fast food franchise was that extension of the American diner. Family could go and have a meal that they knew they were going to enjoy for like 25 cents for a hamburger and 15 cents for French fries. So that really just like propelled the popularity of the fast food industry. And you know what else? It really, really represents American hard work, ingenuity. Two different people come to mind. One would be Harry and Esther Snyder, and they started In-N-Out back in 1948. And a family-owned business, still a family-owned business today. And I believe they were actually the first in the state to have a drive-through.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And then, of course, you cannot forget about his name that I just forgot.
Ray Kroc?
Yeah, Ray Kroc. So this guy, I was researching him, and he was a salesman. He did all kinds of things, but he became the exclusive salesman of the multi-speed milkshake machine. Started selling to McDonald's franchises, and he was out there visiting his territory and just really looking at the McDonald's and seeing how much everybody was just enjoying their food. And he goes inside and he sees 40 milkshakes simultaneously being made. And he then went to the McDonald brothers and bought the company and then just really developed the whole franchise. And I just thought was really interesting was his motto was, you own your own company, but you're not alone, because you have the franchise to support you. So I could go on and on about all this, but look, we have Rick Tomaska. We have to hear your conversation. So, Rick, go ahead and dig in.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been waiting here with this burger here. I do have a Ray Kroc story because he owned the San Diego Padres, and back in the early days, they were a terrible team. And one day he was watching the game from his booth, and he took the microphone and he told everybody he doesn't blame them if they want to leave now because the team is just playing terribly. He was a very outspoken guy. Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to dig into my burger here.
Terrific. Enjoy
That's
that
funny.
Strawberry milkshake as well. Jack's got a chocolate milkshake.
wow.
He's got a double and some fries.
Oh, this is going to be good, Rick.
All right. Have a good time.
Thank you, Colleen. All right, Rick,
Thank you,
we got our goodies here. We are ready. We'll see if we talk about coins at all. We might just be busy just eating here, chowing down. Anyway, let's get into it, Rick. You ready? Or do you need to take a few? You need to eat a few bites of your burger before I
got
start
a good
asking
bite
questions.
in there. That's good.
All right. So, Rick, since you are the leading expert in Franklin half dollars, I just have to ask you, what was it about the Franklin series that stood out to you, decades ago, and made you realize that these coins were going to be an incredible value at some point in the future? Because you were kind of collecting these coins and dealing in these coins before anybody really was paying much attention.
There were a couple dealers early on who were dealing in Franklin's when you go to major shows. There was a fellow out of Massachusetts whose name I can't recall right offhand, who passed away many years ago, but he was early dealer in the coins. But my light bulb moment was at a Long Beach show. It was in the early 1980s. And back then I had specialized in deep mirror proof like Morgan dollars. So I don't know if all the viewers are familiar with deep mirror proof like Morgan dollars, but basically those are coins that are early strikes off of new mint state dies, and the dies were highly polished, so the coins would have an almost proof appearance, so they were referred to as proof likes.
Right.
Now they were then dumped into bags and everything, and usually they'd be very baggy, but I always was fascinated with these coins, and that was my specialty, because I always looked for the finest deep mirror proof like Morgan dollars, because I just looked at it and said to myself, well, here's a coin that offers, at that time they had tremendous eye appeal.
Right.
Their quality was obvious. I mean, these earliest strikes, when you can find them in gem condition.
Right, they're just special coins. They look different than the other coins.
Finest possible eye appeal with these beautiful mirrored surfaces, gem condition quality, and obviously very rare, because only the earliest strikes had this appearance, and to survive in gem condition, they were going to be rare, in any year.
Well, especially proof like, Rick, because those surfaces are so fragile when they're like that they get marked so easily.
Exactly. So there were great coins for collectors. You could get some at the time. You could get some beautiful gems for $500 or less. Actually, when I started out, I was buying and selling them the common dates like ADSs for a couple $100, but they soon started to explode in popularity. The really nice coins began disappearing. I mean, and my motto back then was in all my ads was, do you want the best? And that's what I always looked for my clients.
Yeah. I still hear you saying that.
Yeah. The finest proof like Morgan dollars. And I got to a place where there were proof like Morgan dollars at these shows, but they weren't the same quality as the ones I had seen just a couple of years earlier. Mm-hmm. So that was a problem for me, because then my goal was to always provide my clients with the very finest possible eye appealing, quality rarities possible. And then my light bulb moment was at a show in Long Beach, and I saw two different coins, and one was a 1967 special mint set Kennedy half dollar in the government issue set. Mm-hmm. But this Kennedy half dollar, most special mint set Kennedy half dollars have just a semi proof like appearance. They have no cameo contrast. They just look like regular brilliant proofs. Right. This Kennedy had incredible frosted portrait. It looked like a modern proof. And I thought, wow, here's a coin that's obviously very rare, because I've looked at a lot of special mint sets and I've never seen a coin that looks like this before. The eye appeal is undeniable. It's obviously, the quality is undeniable, and it has tremendous rarity. And at that time, a 67 set would usually sell for $5-6. I was going to offer the guy $15 for it, triple what they normally go for. Figure I'd buy it for that. And so I asked him the price, and he said $75. And I said, because he was kind of thinking the same thing as me. Right. So I bought it anyway. And that's started on my journey at the same show. Then I saw a 1962 Franklin. And the Uverse, again, most Franklin proofs are brilliant proofs with no cameo contrast. And here was this 62 where the portrait of Franklin was just icy snow white. I got a picture here on my last edition. If you look at 1958 there, that's the top 1958 cameo die. And there's maybe, it has a very nice reverse as well. There's maybe 5 to 10 coins in existence that equal that coin in they're so rare.
Right, with that kind
And
of
so
cameo contrast.
that's how I got interested in the whole Franklin Kennedy series, because I saw that it offered collectors incredible eye appeal, incredible quality, tremendous rarity, and they were very, very affordable. So they had great long-term potential. Same thing with a lot of the Kennedys, especially the earlier Kennedys. And then I got involved in the mid-state coins, and what I discovered is, especially in the mid-state Franklins, first of all, they had low mintages for mid-state coins, but most mid-state Franklins, compared to, say, Walking Liberty half dollars in mid-state, you take the typical roll of, say, a 1953D roll of Franklin halves, and you compare it to back then a roll of, say, 1946D Walking Liberty half dollar.
Wow.
That roll of 46Ds, there might be 10 6.5 gems in there. You look at the 53D roll, you'd be lucky to find one coin in 6.4. They're just very, very baggy coins as a general rule, especially the D mints. The S mints not so much, but the S mints were very softly struck. And that's when I began to notice that a lot of these coins, like the S mints, were very softly struck, and they didn't have complete bell lines. And so we worked on developing the full bell line standard, which is, it's basically the same thing, Jack, as our viewers know, as, when we talk about the full head standing Liberty quarters.
Sure.
I mean, it's a big deal if you can find a 1927S in full head. That's the rarest standing Liberty quarter in the series. If you find one in full head, it's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, because most of them, have flat heads because of a poor strike.
Right, they're just so weakly struck.
Yeah, so that's, and it went from there, and that's when I approached, it was in the early 90s, and I started working on my first book after I had about 4 years studying these coins, where I was going to coin shows, 2 or 3 shows a week, traveling around the country, and just looking at, tens of thousands of these coins. And, mid 80s, I figured I was gaining enough knowledge where I could write a book about it. And it's not that I wanted to write a book or to promote it that way, but
there's probably nothing else for you to, there was no reference at the time for you to use.
Yeah. And the thing is, it just seemed to me, and this is what I write in the first page, is that these coins were just too important for collectors to not have something written about them. And that was my inspiration. So I wrote a book, and I modeled it after the Wayne Miller Morgan and Peace Dollar textbook.
Right, which was kind of the first real serious book on Morgans, right?
Yeah, it was a great book, which had a great date by date
By the
analysis.
way, he clearly appreciated proof likes too, because if you show that cover again, that's a very famous deep mirror proof like he's got right on the cover there. That's like
this
a
is
monster
great example.
coin. Yeah, that's
This
one
is
of
a great
the
example.
best deep mirror proof like coins that exists.
Yeah, that's an 1878S, otherwise known, Jack, right, as a common date, right?
Right.
But
normally.
the condition rarity of this coin is extraordinary. This is probably a $100,000 coin today because of the condition of this particular 78S.
Right, it's just a mega coin.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing with collecting nowadays. So much of it is about condition rarity. And
well, again,
Franklin's.
People have caught on to your mantra of "Do you want the best?"
Have another bite of this, Jack.
Go for it. But Rick, that's people catching on. Like I said to your kind of what you had been saying all along of, do you want the best? And like you said, now condition rarity is such a huge thing. Where you have a coin that, maybe, in low grades it could be less than 100, certainly less than $1,000. In the highest grade, like you said, could be a 6-figure coin.
Yeah.
If you want the best.
It really started with the Morgan dollars in the 1970s, because you look in the 1960s, Morgan dollars, condition rarity was not factored in. I mean, I think Lincoln cents and cents were more popular back then than Morgan dollars in the 1960s. In the 1970s, people really began to focus on the fact that a lot of Morgan dollars could be really rare in a high-grade mint-state condition. Like a great example is an 1880 Morgan dollar. They struck over 5 million coins. but finding one in MS65 is borders on the impossible. They're
Right.
$20,000, $30,000 coins today.
Right.
And it's the same principle with Mint State Franklins, especially with full bell lines. You got the 1953S, which is I've gone through thousands and thousands of original rolls over the years, looked at millions of Franklins, millions of Mint State Franklins. I've never personally found a 1953S with full bell lines. That's how rare it is.
Wow.
So when I bought this example, it was, to me, the most stunning, brilliant 53S I'd ever seen or handled. It's just a wonder coin. It's a 6.6 plus FBL created by NGC and my We the People holder. And the We the People holder, this is also very important.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question,
Yeah.
Rick. Is it was kind of, I know this is kind of one of your latest achievements is your collaboration with NGC. What did inspire you to create this holder, and what's the idea behind it here?
Well, originally I was just putting my own seal on certain coins, like my Everest seal or my ECC seal. But then NGC actually contacted me about having my own unique holder that would identify coins that I have personally reviewed and evaluated. And I really like the idea because what it means to the collector is that, okay, I've looked at this coin and it meets my standard for that grade. And it made total sense because, you look at PCGS and NGC and they grade a lot of coins and they're not really interested in only putting the coins that are really nice for the grade in the holders. There's low-ended examples and there's high-end examples.
Right. Yeah, I explain to people it's almost like your report card in school. There's a coin that got an A for that grade, and there's a coin that got like a C, or a D. It's still passed, but
right.
And that's how it's always going to be. I mean, it's like somebody has to graduate the lowest in their class, and it doesn't mean you didn't graduate. It is, it doesn't mean that the grading service did anything wrong, but we're looking for those ones that are the A coins.
That's a perfect analogy. That's a perfect analogy. Yeah, that's exactly how it is with coins. You can't just buy the grade on the holder. I got some comparison coins to show. I don't know if it'd do any good to show them. You think I should try this, Jack?
Let's try it. We'll see what happens. Can't hurt.
Okay. Well, here's two coins. Okay. Yeah, that's what I'll do. Okay. Right. Now, this could apply to.
Our friend Scott mentioned he just bought a 1965 SMS Kennedy in 67 Cameo. He's super excited about it.
That's awesome. Congratulations, Scott.
What do you buy?
A viewer wrote in on chat. He bought, what was it, Silver?
65 SMS in 67 Cameo.
It's a great grade.
First year of the SMS too. Awesome.
That's great. In Ultra Cameo?
Cameo.
Cameo, that's a great coin in Cameo. Yeah. So, okay, here's because I have the same, I'm going to show an NGC example as well. So I'm not picking on any particular grading service. But there's a 1976S clad. It's graded 6.9 deep Cameo. Deep Cameo means it's the equivalent. It should be the equivalent of the NGC Ultra Cameo. Okay, and if you could see the Cameo contrast on the coin, it's for me, it's not a coin that when I'm going to put a coin in my holder, same date, it's going to have this kind of contrast.
Right.
You can see the difference, right?
Right, yeah, that one's a real blazer. Like, it's a lot frostier
really
looking.
Cameo, really deep. So you don't have to be first of all, you don't have to be a coin grading expert to see the difference. Your eyes can see the difference, and that's really, really important because a lot of grading, is very, very esoteric. But in this case, it's pretty straightforward. And the other example I was going to give, here's an NGC piece. Now, they graded this coin 6.7 Cameo, but the Cameo is very, very light. And I would not put this in a Kennedy aspiration holder because it just doesn't meet my standard for what a Cameo should look like. Now here for a 65. Now here's one. Now it is a 6.8 Cameo, but that's irrelevant. What's important is the fact that it has the Cameo contrast, and that's a separate
Right. Yeah, they're looking
And
at
there
it
you
from
get-
two different standpoints. You're looking at is it cameo or not, and then they're looking at the grade. And
At
of
the
course,
grade.
just to make sure viewers understand, the grading services are still wholly independent. You have no say or over what grade they give it, but you're able to tell them, once they assign a grade, this coin is not a coin that I would put in my holder because it's not up to my rigorous, really rigorous standards for, cameo and eye appeal.
Exactly. It's a two-stage process in that way. And the first they grade it, the coins are sent to me, and I say no, 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 yes, this is going in the holder. No, 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 yes, this is going. That's how it works.
Uh-huh.
So it's a little bit of extra cost, but it's minimal. But I decided, I've done all these books, and I decided, look, nobody knows more about Franklin's, Kennedy half dollars, a lot of other proof coins as well. I've done a lot with Morgan proofs and Barber half dollars in proof.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, well, this is a legacy I really want to leave for future collectors. Just putting the nicest examples of these two series. We'll also do and the Eisenhowers, and we're also starting it with the Washington Quarters, coins that I've reviewed. So the collector of tomorrow, future generations knows, hey, this is a really nice coin for the date and grade. That's to me something that I thought would be, a great service I could provide. That's basically it.
Right. So we talked about we showed the We the People holder. Obviously, we're talking a lot about Kennedys. We're kind of talking about them interchangeably here a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit also, besides the We the People holder, about that aspirational Kennedy holder you've got?
Yeah. Now, first of all, there's a theme here. You got the Franklin We the People, Kennedy Aspiration, and the Eisenhower I Like Ike. Franklin We the People. He's one of the founding fathers. The first three words in our Constitution.
Right.
So that is the theme of the coin. It's basically what these people stood for historically, what they meant to our country, what their contributions were. And so the Franklin, founding father, is going to be the We the People holder in big, bold letters there. So, our show is always intertwined numismatics with our country and with the values of our country.
Right.
That's always been
principles.
They're intertwined. You can't separate them. And and I never want to make the show just about money. It's not just it's about our country. And there's so much history. There's so much shared history when you hold one of these older coins that other Americans have owned or passed on from 100, 200 years ago. And so that's now the Kennedy Aspiration. I have one of those. I call it the Kennedy Aspiration because he's got these two great quotes. One was his inaugural speech, ask not what your country can do, ask what you can do for your country.
Yeah, what a great quote.
That's timeless. I would love to hear a president say that today, personally, okay?
Right.
And the second is at Rice University when he gave the speech announcing that we choose to go to the moon. And he went on in that speech. It was a great speech. We choose to go to the moon and other things, not because it is easy, but because it is hard. And we'll take on that challenge.
Right.
And it was a very important moment because the Soviet Union was taking over many countries in the world. There was a real race for dominance. There was a real fear of communist, takeover. And they were ahead of us in the space race. And so, whoever owns space, has a huge advantage.
Uh-huh.
And so our country underwent this program to go to the moon by the end of the decade. And I just heard, Jack, that our government during those years, 5% of the United States government was being spent on the NASA space program to get to the moon by the end of the decade. That's how expensive it was.
Wow.
But we made it. And what's extraordinary is that to this day, we're the only country that have landed people on the moon and brought them back. Mm-hmm. So that's the theme of the Kennedy coin. But again, every Kennedy coin is reviewed by me. for eye appeal and quality for the date and grade. And then finally, the Eisenhower dollar is so important. I call it the I like Ike because that was the famous theme of his campaign. I mean, that's an iconic.
Yeah, I was
theme.
just going to
I
say
like
your most recent endeavor. That was going to be my next question, and you clearly you're proudly wearing your button today. I love the big I like button that you're wearing. I like Ike button. That's great.
Yeah.
Tell us about the Ike holder. Let's hear about it.
Yeah. Well, this was this is again working with NGC. How do I want it designed? Well, first of all, it's most important. He was our supreme Allied commander in World War II. He was in charge of all the Allied troops on the European theater.
Right.
And he was the man who had to call the day of the D-Day invasion, June 6, 1944. And I talk about this a lot in my presentations, the fact that it's difficult talking about this because he knew that the minute he called for that invasion, within 48 hours, thousands and thousands of really brave men would be dead or badly wounded. And he knew that. And there was no guarantee of success. In fact, he had a letter written saying if the mission had failed, that he hailed all the brave men that hit the shore and that he takes full responsibility for the failure. He had that letter written out.
Wow.
So he was.
Yeah, that's a tough decision to make. That's a huge.
It was a very tough, and he had to deal with a lot of other generals with very strong egos, and he handled it. He was a supreme Allied commander, and then he was in the 1950s. He was pretty much retired, but both political parties, the Democrats and Republicans, wanted him to run for president, and he never considered himself a politician. But they had him convinced that the country really needed him, and so he went with the Republican Party simply because he felt his values were more closely aligned with the Republican Party, and so he ran for president. And so he became president for the best possible of reasons. He didn't want to be president.
Right.
He only did it out of a sense of service to his country, and that was the best possible reason.
Right. I mean,
he had a great.
It's really parallel too. Sorry to interject here. It's really parallel with the beginning of our country. George Washington was a very reluctant president.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Right. Yeah, that's a great point, Jack. Exactly. The same thing. He was a general, and he had to be talked into it.
Right.
Become president, and then they wanted him to be king. Don't quit. And they were shocked. And I think who was it, King George, who said when he gave up after 8 years, that he acknowledged George Washington was truly a great man to give that power up as he did. So,
but it just shows though Ike had that same sensibility. He just he put his country first. He didn't necessarily want to lead it, but when he saw the necessity and the desire from his fellow men, that he was willing to do it,
Yeah. And the thing is, I'm glad I was able to do this with the Eisenhower dollar because there are so many great coins in this series in condition rarity when they're correctly graded. Mm-hmm. And like you see in that picture there, that 1971S, that's what an ultra cameo should look like. Right. That kind of frost. But there are so many coins out there, Jack, rated 6.9 ultra cameo or 6.9D cameo that are just have contrasts that's so moderate, and yet they're in deep cameo holders. So one of the important things about these holders is that I insisted on it with NGC is that, okay, I'm going to do this, but then NGC has to have their own separate independent populations for these coins. In other words, you can't mix them in with all the other Ikes that have already been graded. Right. The collector has to know when they look on the NGC website, okay, there's 597 graded of this coin, but in the I like Ike holder, there's only 101 or something like that, or 79. So that's very, very, very important. That was absolutely critical.
Right. Yeah, the Ikes I love, besides the proofs, I don't think people realize in high mint state grades, these things are really rare.
They
Yeah.
are really tough.
And
Yes, they
especially the
are.
clad. The clad is such a hard metal, and I don't know. They didn't
Yeah.
strike up well, and they had kind of little marks just from the way
My
they were
goodness.
struck. Yeah.
And the pitting on some of them is just as they came off the die. I mean, even they were so badly pitted as they came off the die. Even if they never fell into the mint bag, they couldn't be graded 6.5 just because they had such severe pitting. So the production quality was very, very low, and it's as Jack says, you have a lot of very rare dates. I have given a presentation on the silver mint state Ikes, but to do it on the complete set with the clad, about the best grade you can hope for is MS65. But those dates, that set is a very tough set to put together.
Well, I think besides, first off, the striking, especially on the clad, you have, if there are marks already on the blank planchet, they didn't necessarily strike out. So even when they strike it, there's marks already there. But I think the big problem with this, and I think it's kind of the issue with Franklin's too, is it's such a big flat coin, like the details. Yeah, it's really funny. It's really because these guys, are bald. So you have this big flat surface area on the coin.
Yeah.
You have a big open
Yeah.
field around them, and it just is. It's just a magnet for marks. Like you have bag marks in these areas, and they show up so easily. They're not camouflaged in those areas.
Yeah,
you know.
It is interesting that way because comparing it, for example, like I talked about the Walking Liberty $50. They tend to grade much higher because the portrait of Liberty is much narrower. And it's the same thing with gold double eagles. The St. Gaudens double eagle compared to the Liberty double eagle. The Liberty has that broad face that attracts all kinds of marks. That raised portion of the obverse.
What's the highest point too? Right.
Yeah, and on the Saint, the highest point are her breast and her left knee.
Right.
And so you might get some rub there, but it doesn't look nearly as bad as the marks you would find on a Liberty double eagle.
Right. Well, also, if you think about, it just kind of made me think about this. Those coins where the highest point is, like you said, the breast or the knee or some smaller area, one little area.
Right.
Whereas a Kennedy or Franklin, it's like 2/3 of the whole coin, the whole portrait is the high point.
Exactly.
You've got
Exactly.
this
That's
giant
why
high
it's
point.
so hard. Yeah, so hard to get high grade proof in mint state Franklins, and the mint state examples. Most mint state Franklins there's a large percentage of them are just very unattractively toned. They come from mint sets. Back then, came from out of most.
Right, and
most
those
of them
sets,
came from
right. So
cardboard
the sets were definitely not like archival museum quality materials they were using back then. Now some of them we get lucky and they tone beautifully once in a while.
Yeah. I just bought that 58D for I forget it was about $34,000, which is a common date 6.7 FBL, but it was just gorgeous, incredible color toning. I'm gonna have another bite of my burger here.
there you go. There you go. But yeah, you see them like you said, once in a while you get one of those ones that just happen to be in the right amount of temperature or humidity or whatever, the perfect right conditions, and they tone beautifully. But usually, like you said, especially the back, because they had that kind of adhesive that held the paper on the back board in those old mint sets.
Yeah.
And then the reverse of the coin gets that brown, streaky, like horrible tone.
It's also very, there's a lot of. What's most interesting, Jack, is that, for example, 1958, the D mints tone differently than the P mints. Same thing with it every year. The last year they had all three mints. In 1954, you had P, D, and S.
Yeah.
P's, D's, and S's all tone differently. And so they may have been packaged at the Treasury, but they all tone differently. So it may suggest something different, some slight differences in the way the planchets, et cetera, were produced at those various mints.
Well, it's interesting because one thing that comes to mind is, I had maybe a month or so ago on the show, Greg Roberts, who's the CEO of AMark and of Spectrum Group, and he was saying, AMark deals in a lot of silver, and they actually sell silver to these groups that make the planchets for the Silver Eagles. And I always thought, well, they're 99% pure. As long as it's 99% pure, it's all the same. How much more pure does it get? but he was
Right.
talking about how the mint rejects a ton of stuff based on just these trace minerals that are in the silver. In that last 1%, there can be so many different other minerals depending on where the silver was mined from. So I could see it being something like that too, where San Francisco got silver from one source, Denver got it from a different source, and that little might be 100th, tenth of a percent, some tiny fractional different trace mineral that's in the silver.
Yeah.
And it just reacts differently with the oxygen and the chemical, the air.
Also, the mints, would lubricate the dyes,
right?
After so many strikes, and whatever was on that dye could, leave some kind of surface film on the coin, on the blank.
And striking pressure too, I think, because you see kind of the difference in. I mean, if you look at like say Morgans, and you see certain ones have that satiny luster, and some are more proof-like, that more mirrory luster.
Yeah.
And you see with that they tone differently. I think because of the fabric, kind of how the coins are made, the texture of the surface, the oxidation kind of adheres to it in different ways too.
And piece dollars are very rare with color toning, color toning.
Yeah.
Piece dollars and Franklins are both extremely rare with nice color toning. They're 1,000 times rarer than Morgan dollars with nice color toning. That's how rare they are.
Oh yeah, piece dollars. It's like if you see tone one there, it's almost always brown.
Right. Same thing with Franklins. They're almost always brown, gray, just lackluster color, very dull. To find a Franklin with nice multicolored toning that has some life to it, they're very rare. And then to get it in gem condition. Yeah. So I've always paid huge premiums. Just same thing with Morgan dollars, where you see Commandate 81S's in MS66 going for $10,000, a coin that would normally sell for a few $100s.
Right.
Because of the color toning. So.
Right. And the Franklins get those when they do tone nice. They tone nice. You get those oranges and greens, those wild. Yeah. I mean, the colors are phenomenal, but like you said, it's just so few and far between.
Then the challenge is getting decent toning on the other side as well. Because there's some, like 57Ds, will have beautiful toning on one side, but then the other side will be just dull gray. It's tough.
Right, right. So, sorry, now I got confused here.
I got you off track.
You got me all. It's all good. So, can you take us through a little bit? I know it from concept to having a coin in a holder in your hand there. I know there's a lot of work and planning before you get to kind of the final stages. What's the process like to create these holders?
From the very beginning, well, they'll send me some models, some ideas, and I'll tell them no. I'd like a portrait of, for example, on the Eisenhower dollar. What I want is a portrait of Eisenhower as president on the obverse, and then on the reverse, something from him as general. So they got a good picture of him that I liked as president, and we added the I like button there, and that was great. And then we got this great picture on the reverse where he's talking to the troops, on the day of the D-Day invasion. That just historic moment, and you have a part of his speech there, or surrounding the coin. So it was just working with NGC until we got the holder exactly with the exact message that we wanted for any collectors, so that if they're buying the coin, if you're buying a coin for your kids, they can look at it and maybe see this as Ike as president and see this as D-Day, and maybe it'll stir some curiosity, and they'll look it up and learn a bit of history of about our country.
I like how you also kind of brought in the space program on both on the besides just on Kennedy there. Yeah,
that is, that was such an achievement. We choose to go to the moon with Saturn V rocket. That was such a historic moment, and no other country has, achieved that to this day. We might be getting there soon, though. We got Elon Musk, who's doing a pretty good job there.
Yeah, I think they just brought the first people on a Tesla rocket up to the International Space Station, right?
Yeah. So the holders are lovely, and we worked out the Washington holder, and we'll be offering that very soon.
That's exciting. So it kind of starts with you kind of have the concept, you give them the idea is what you want, and then they send you the imagery, and then you kind of move it around and tweak it a little.
Yeah, it's about what is the one or two things that really define this particular individual that as a historic reference contribution to his country, and I think we really hit the nail on the head with all three of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're great. Can you explain to our viewers, and I think you kind of did, but let's just reiterate, like, why did you feel these holders were necessary? And I think you kind of answered it, but let's just make it super clear.
Again, the first thing is I take these coins and these series very, very seriously. I know how rare they are when you can find them in correctly graded condition.
Right.
The problem is, at the grading services themselves. For example, when I developed the Cameo, Deep Cameo standards, full Bellline standards at PC just back in the early 90s, they don't have the same graders there anymore.
Right.
The new graders that have come in over the decades, they may have very similar standards, but you can find small differences in the way they grade coins, or say a mid-state Franklin $half than the way they did maybe 20, 25 years ago. And so there's a lot of coins that, to me, that I'll see that are in a 6, for example, in a 6.6 FBL holder. Maybe by the standards of today, that's an accurate grade. But for me, it's not a solid high, solid coin for the grade, a solid 6.6, and that's what with good eye appeal. And that's what the collector of today needs. They don't want to buy a coin that just makes the grade. You want to buy a premium example for the grade, because those are the kind of coins they'll be good for you, good to you over the long term. And that's what we're talking about here is the long term. We're talking about coins that are just premium for the date and grade. And I just said to myself, I know more about grading. I've seen more of these coins and know them better than any of the graders at PCGS or NGC. This is a legacy I can leave. I'm going to go ahead and do this. It's very time consuming reviewing all the coins, but at the same time, I think it's important for the hobby.
Right. Yeah. And I think one of the things that it does is, when I was at Stax, a friend of mine he's been a dealer for probably 50 years now or so, and he said to me, look, I was pretty new at the coin world, and he said,
right,
look, when you buy or sell a coin, he said you have two conversations. One is the price, the other is the quality of the coin. So if you buy good quality, that conversation goes away. You don't even have to have that conversation. So it's essentially what you're doing for people. Yeah. You're taking that factor out of the equation. Like, you look at it, you go, oh yeah, it's a no-brainer. The coin's all there.
Yeah. I'll give just one example. Before there was a PCGS or NGC, I told the story before. There was had started dealing in cameo proof Franklins, and once in a while I would get a 1951 in gem, and it would have nice cameo contrast. And I usually bought and sold them in the $300 to $400 range. Mm-hmm. Then I came across this one in a dealer's case. It was in a little white capital holder. He wasn't there, but the cameo was snow white. I had never seen something like this on a 1951. Mm-hmm. And in fact, we have one off that die here. But he eventually came back to his table, and I asked him the price, and I thought he'd say like $400, and he told me $1,000. Mm-hmm. That's a lot more than I'd ever paid for any early proof. I got it here. But anyhow, I came back the next day, first thing in the morning, and I said to myself, look, it's obviously an early strike off of a fabulous die. It's gem condition. It's obviously really rare. Right. This is going to be good to some collector in the future. And that coin today is about a $15,000 coin. And here's one. This is one off that die. You may not be able to see it very well on this on this screen, but it's die number 6, and this is another feature here that's really important. Die number 6 means it's the 6th coin pictured in my book, Cameo and Brilliant Proof Coinage. NGC is now recognizing early strikes off the top Cameo dies in my first book, and they give it those die numbers, and that's very, very important for collectors to know. And they also get more registry points if you're building a registry set for the NGC registry. I'm actually looking at possibly, I've got the actual original plates for my first book. And the thing is with these die varieties becoming so popular, and there's a limited number of books out there, I've seen them go, I've seen them on eBay, or not eBay, but Amazon, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Some guy's asking over $1,000, crazy prices.
Wow.
I'm thinking, if I could do some reprints. So I'm looking into the possibility of being able to reprint that book, because I have the original plates and you have all the pictures there. You can see the die varieties. So it would be great collectors of this. I still have a couple hundred copies left, but that's it.
And for that coin you just showed us, what year was that one again?
51. It's a 51, die number 6, which is the top die for 1951.
That's what I was going to ask you. I wanted to ask you if die 6 is that the best die for that year?
For 1951, yeah. Yeah, that's die number 6.
So you've gone through all these proofs and you've kind of recognized the characteristics of the die. So you can say which dies struck the coins with the deepest frost, the deepest cameo. And then you can identify if those coins are from those dies. Those are like the best of the best.
Right. Each up through 1961, almost all the cameo dies are very recognizable. They'll have certain kinds of die polishing lines or certain kinds of frost characteristics. Once you get to 1962, all of a sudden the mint seemed to take a leap, and you've got much more a cameo frost on the obverse and reverse that would be much more even, and the dies would be very, very similar. So it's really difficult to tell the last 2 years apart. There's a couple really, really nice 1962 and 1963 dies, but in those last 2 years, there's a lot of very, very nice dies that struck some exceptional pieces. They're rare, but they're out there. But you get to 61 and earlier, and the dies are pretty, very unique for the most part. And you can easily distinguish the really nice ones from the okay dies.
Well, because I guess at the time, it wasn't necessarily their intention. Like they just they polished up the dies to make the proofs, and some came out better than others.
This is the interesting thing. I'm glad you brought that up, because they were trying to create cameo dies, because they had a procedure, and this is a conversation I had early on working on my first book. I was able to talk to the man by name of Don Weaver. He had started out as a general helper at the Philadelphia Mint in the proof making division.
Uh-huh.
And he had graduated all the way up to the chief of the coining division when I was speaking with him, and he was great to talk to. We had a lot of phone conversations, but he told me, Rick, back then we were trying to create these cameo proofs because they were so beautiful. And what we did was we take the die and we dip the die in a bath of 5% nitric acid, 95% alcohol. We called it pickling. Uh-huh. And that acid would completely frost the die. And then we'd take it and put it on a buffing wheel. And of course, the recessed portion of that die, the portrait of Franklin and the letters, wouldn't receive the buffing treatment, only the fields.
Right.
And so they would buff it until the fields got a mirror-like finish. And then those earliest strikes off the die, those very earliest strikes would have that frosted, acid-etched frost transferred to the coin blank. And so those earliest strikes would have to be these beautiful, beautiful cameos. The only problem with these acid-etched dies is that they were very delicate. Mm-hmm. It was about 200 tons of pressure on a Franklin $half. They were double struck. You can imagine how that frost would very quickly fade with each successive strike. And so the vast majority of Franklins have no cameo contrast. So on the other hand, the demand for these cameos was so strong that by the late 60s, the mint began experimenting with new ways to create more cameo coins. And in the early 1970s, they actually began to sandblast the die and create a real intense frost off the fields. And then they had a chrome plating process that they began trying out to harden the die, give it extra durability. By the late 70s, they pretty much had it perfected where they could strike thousands of ultra cameo coins before the die would wear. And then it was economical. It was feasible for them to replace the die. They didn't have to replace it every 50 strikes as they would have for the Franklins. They could strike thousands of coins before the die would wear. And then more recently, they've, from what I've seen, are using a laser technology to create the cameo effect. So the advancements over the last 50 years have been, it's like going from the dark ages, which were the Franklin, early Kennedy era, to this modern era. It's a huge leap in technology.
Right. Yeah, because now, think modern proofs. I can't think of the last time I've seen a coin in recent time that was a proof that wasn't a deep cameo or ultra cameo.
Unless they intentionally didn't want to make like a reverse proof.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because now it's all, like you said, it's all lasers and it's like Star Wars, computers and lasers and
But even in the ASE series, even though they're all cameo, you still have more production problem issues with those earlier San Francisco and Philadelphia mint issues with spotting, etc.
Right.
So, that's what makes the ASE series so exciting, is because the later West Point coins are virtually all of them are flawless, 6970 condition, but those earlier ones, you got a lot of spotting problems, etc., that make them quite rare in high grade condition.
Right. Well, then on top of it too is just that when those coins were first coming out in the 80s and the 90s, it wasn't until maybe the last 10 or 15 years that people really got interested in certifying the coins. So when you go back and try and certify a coin that's 30 years old, like good luck finding one that's still hasn't been mishandled or stored somewhere where it got spots. Now it's different. They make the coins and they send them to grading. There's not a lot of time for a lot of damage to happen. But coin that's been in a basement and then sold to a dealer who threw it in a box and shipped it to a client who then put it in their attic, and all of a sudden it's been through 20 hands, and it's not
I remember
69 or
rolls.
70.
You just dump them into the rolls, but I remember a box of 1993s, and even though they hadn't been messed around, the great majority had white milk spots on them. Just a lot of spotting on most of the coins. So that was a huge problem back, at those earlier years.
Yeah, in the proofs and the mint state. The mint state too, I spoke to
That's
somebody.
That's what I was talking about, the mint state 1993 ASEs,
Yeah, but it's a problem with some of the proofs too. But I know somebody who bought 96 mint state, which is one of key date, and I remember talking to somebody who bought 2 unopened monster boxes and was like, I'm gonna get all these 70s. They're worth a fortune. They sent the 2 unopened boxes to be graded. They got 0 70s. And a lot of the coins did not grade 69. They thought they thought it was a no-brainer because they got these untouched, completely, essentially out of a time capsule. But it just shows, like you said, they weren't, the quality control wasn't the same. They didn't have the same capability.
I once bought an original bag of 1963 D Franklins. And the coins were all in original rolls. They all had beautiful end roll toning on all the coins. They were entirely original. I thought, wow, I'm going to get some 6.5s out of this. I submitted the 150 nicest for grading. The highest grade I got was MS64. I lost like $3,000 on the deal. That's a chance you take. It's the same thing with proofs. Guys, you can buy unopened proof sets from like 1957 thinking you're going to get some great coins in there, and you buy all these sets and there's nothing there, and then
they're all milk spots.
Spotted.
Right.
That I've given the presentation on the show about that deal of 100 sealed 1958 sets, and all the halves had spotting issues, every single one. And it's just one of those things. That's how it was.
Right. Well, before we go, let's get back to your holders for a second here, because we've been going for a while here. But so the holders are, they're great. We love these holders. You explain, only the elite kind of coins are getting in here.
Yeah,
these are kind of more prestigious than your standard holder.
This is here's what it is, Jack. What this is me saying to myself, okay, if I'm a collector, and I know about these coins, is this a coin I want in my collection in this grade? If I say yes, it goes in the holder. If I say no, not really, it doesn't go in the holder. That's basically what we're talking about. That's as clear as I can make it.
And
I hope that explains it.
Screen.
And most importantly, again, NGC has their own separate population reports in their census for my proprietary holders where I've reviewed every single one of the only coins that I have reviewed go into these holders.
Which is great. And speaking of that, how do you know? And I know it's evolving and changing, I'm sure, but I'm sure far fewer coins will get into your holder into these holders than into just the standard NGC holders. Yeah. Can you give us some idea how much rarer these coins are to find these coins in these holders?
Anywhere from I would say for some dates, depending on the grade, if it's a lower grade coin and proof, it would be a higher percentage would get into the holder. But if it's a higher grade, it would be a slightly smaller percentage. But if it's a real top grade, it might be only 5% or less.
Okay.
I showed you the Eisenhower dollars. You look at the 1976S Type 1 clad Eisenhower dollar, and you see that in proof 69 deep cameo, ultra cameo, there's been about 19,000 graded. I would be surprised if I had a chance to look at all 19,000 of those coins, that if there would be 1,000 that would get into a 6.9 ultra cameo I like Ike holder, because most of them simply, they've got haze issues, and most of them simply do not have the cameo contrast that I would want on my Ike to be in a 6.9 ultra cameo holder.
Right, and I think
so. They can be very, very rare. There's a lot of rare dates, and I'll be talking about it I'm going to be discussing it in all my presentations. But I'll show the latest population numbers, but at the same time, I'm going to explain that what the key dates are going to be. I'm giving a presentation next week. I'm putting one together for the silver proof Ikes in 6.9 ultra cameo, and those are really tough in an Ike holder because they're about 10 times tougher. I don't have very many coins that I was able to assemble for complete sets. Most of them will graded 6.9 star cameo, 6.8 ultra cameo. The standards are very strict, so very few make it into that top grade. That is the highest grade for these holders to this date, a 6.9 ultra cameo. So they're very elite coins, and they should be, because true 6.9 ultra cameo Ikes, until you get to the 1978S. The 78S, that was where quality really took a huge leap forward at the mint, and most 1978Ss are going to be either 6.8 ultra cameo or 6.9 ultra cameo, but not so for all the earlier 10 dates.
Right. So they finally figured out how to make these coins nice, and then they just said, "Okay, we're done."
We had the packaging problems.
But then they said, "Okay, we're done making these coins. We finally figured out how to do it. We're gonna make Susan B. Anthony dollars and make the dollars smaller."
Yeah, right. but the weird thing is, here they went through all this work with the technology, and this is the other problem we haven't talked about it, is the packaging back then, because you could have a beautiful Ike,
right?
And the packaging they used in the 70s, where it was these hard plastic packages, but the red felt in there would cause the coins to develop this heavy haze that just etched itself into the metal of the coin, and you couldn't conserve those coins. You couldn't curate them because it got into the metal. And it's same thing with proof packaging in the 1980s. It wasn't until you get into the 1990s where apparently the Mint figured it out. Apparently they got a chemist or somebody who developed packaging for them that had inert materials that preserved the coin, so you could get a 1990 set that in most cases still looks brand new.
Yeah, because the old holders, the kind of interior gasket was like a hard plastic. The new ones, it's almost like a foam core, which I don't know what's in it, but I guess they figured out something better that seems to be better for the coins.
Definitely, yeah. Except for the statehood quarter years where they did something, because a lot of statehood quarters have toning issues.
Right, they get that hazy, cloudy, bluish thing.
Right,
which is what you see in the Ikes too. That's that Ike color, that hazy blue.
Oh, so many of them. The silver Ikes came in we call them brown Ikes because the Mint packaging was brown, but so many of them are so clouded, they're absolutely destroyed. I mean, it's just,
Right. Well, this has been great, Rick. I hope you enjoyed your burger. I know you were looking forward to it. I think we got you a strawberry shake too. I understand that's your favorite shake. So
thank you.
We try and take care of you here, Rick.
You guys do a great job. I hope the viewers have enjoyed that. And if I'm sure that they probably have some questions. That maybe there's some way we could field some of those questions. That's what we're all about.
Yeah, if people want to chat us or email us.
There's no such thing as a dumb question. I ask questions all the time that other people may think are dumb, but it doesn't bother me because I don't know, so I ask.
Right. And that's a good. I'm glad you kind of mentioned that before we move on here, though. But I mean, I was just telling somebody last week, like, one of the things I love about coin collecting is I literally learn something new every day. Like, no matter how much you know, there is always more to learn.
That's so very true. And the thing is, it's a kind of hobby where most of us, for the most part, are self-taught. Mm-hmm. And we're self-taught, but we have other people who before us who have gained knowledge who also were self-taught previous generations, and so we just try to pass that on to future generations. And that's what we're doing here at RCTV, what I'm doing with my proprietary holders, with my books, but there's still questions you may have, so we're available.
Right, exactly. Well, this has been great. I really appreciate it, Rick.
We actually have one quick question from a guest.
Oh, we have a question from a viewer, Rick. Okay. All right, let's hear what it is.
It's Scott again, actually. He's wondering, when did the accented hair variety of the Kennedy come out, and what were people thinking at that time? When did people realize that was a thing, and did they instantly know this was going to be a valuable?
Oh, that's a great question.
It is a great question. Again, the story behind that was the first proof. It was actually the first coin strike, the first proof Kennedy struck, and they estimate about 100,000 or so were struck before they showed these new coins to the widow, Mrs. Kennedy, and she was a perfectionist, Mrs. Kennedy, and she just didn't like some of the detailed designs in her husband's portrait, specifically the accents in his hair. So she asked that those be changed. And so they immediately stopped the presses and they redesigned the coin to what we now refer to as the Type 2. And all the subsequent Kennedys are that Type 2. And so it's an important variety. Number one, the first Kennedy struck. Most of them are very, they're the poorest quality in general, proof Kennedy struck. Those first 100,000 coins have
probably because they were rushing them out. They were really rushing.
They were rushing them out.
Yeah.
I mean, the coins. People were there was so much demand for this new Kennedy $50 after he had only been assassinated just a couple months earlier. They were rushing them out. The quality was horrible. So many are spotted and hairlined. Very few survivors in exceptional condition. But they discontinued it without anybody noting the difference. And then it was in the early 1980s that, I began specializing in these coins. And, I noticed this profound difference and investigated it further and got the story, learned about the story behind it. unfortunately, back then, 1970, 80, 81, nobody paid any attention to the accented hair of Kennedy, and so a lot of them were melted down because, again, back then, silver had hit around $50 an ounce, and
Right.
you had 1957 and 1964 proof sets with dimes, quarters, halves. Dealers were just cutting those coins out, throwing them into bins, and sending the coins to smelters, proof coins. So a lot of them were melted down, and what really put the accented hair on the map was my first book, where I had the picture of the accented hair in the book, where you could actually see that variety. It's really easy to distinguish from the other variety, and that's when it really took off, and that was 1992.
So it wasn't
And then,
until around
of course,
1980
I forgot to
that you
add, of
discovered
course,
it?
I forgot to add, of course, that I again contacted David Hall and Mark Salzberg at NGC, told them about the variety, and I sent them examples, and they recognized the significance of the variety, and put it on their holders as the accented hair with its own separate population, which is very, very important. Just like we're doing now with these proprietary holders.
What were you thinking when you found out about that variety, Rick?
I thought that was it has such a great story. It takes you back to 1963 and 1964, and when I remembered going for those, when I heard at the local coin shop that they just came in with some 1964 proof sets, I remember going there and the place was packed. I mean, the issue price was $2.10, and it wasn't before long that these sets were selling for $20.
Oh, wow.
There was so much demand for the Kennedy $half in whatever mint state or proof condition. And it just takes me back to those days. And it really is a most important coin in the series because, again, first proof Kennedy ever struck. Very limited. A lot of them were melted down, but it's also the poorest quality Kennedy. I mean, if I were so fortunate to get 100 original accented hairs that had never been seen before, I would be lucky to get a couple coins in 6/8 out of the 100 coins. There probably 50 to 70 would be spotted, hairline to a heavy degree. I get a small group of proof 6/5s and 6s, a handful of 7s, maybe 5 or 10, and maybe a couple 6/8. Whereas a type 2 variety out of 100, you might get 10 to 26/8s, and you might get 26 7s. Mm-hmm. So the 64 type 2 is if you can find and even that though is low quality compared to later Kennedys. As the mint improved its technology, you had fewer and fewer of these issues. So that type 2 is also rare. It's just not as rare as that accented hair.
Right. So Rick, you noticed this difference in the 80s. How did you figure out that these were the first ones struck and find out the story about Jackie Kennedy reviewing it and everything?
I'd have to go back and look at my research to that time to answer that question. But that was over 30 years ago, and I don't remember how I came across the original research behind it. I had talked to a lot of people. I looked in a lot of different numismatic sources for it.
Right. Before
I learned the story, but I couldn't tell you the origins of the source of that. Yeah.
Wow, it's interesting. So before again, kind of like with these cameos and things, you were at the forefront. You're the one who kind of made people realize what this coin was and the importance of it, though. This is all from your research and your books and everything. Yeah.
Well, this is the whole thing with the entire series. There's a lot of really rare coins in exceptional condition struck after World War II. And I especially love the larger coins, of course, the $half and the dollars. I mean, I've always, been more attracted to like many collectors, more attracted to the larger coins. And basically the largest, you can't even find $half and change anymore. I mean, the largest coins you find in change are quarters.
Right.
So the $half is a huge coin, and because it's such a large coin, they tend to be of lower quality just because they're more prone to bag marks,
Right.
more prone to having imperfections, than a smaller coin. So they're the greatest challenge for the collector of today. And you have these iconic people on them. You have Kennedy, you have Franklin, you have Eisenhower, just great Americans, and again, my legacy is that, again, I put my life's work into these things, and I didn't want the series polluted with a lot of coins that I thought were just not the better coins for the date grade. So I said, okay, I'm just going to establish these 3 holders here for these series. And so, with my knowledge, I'm going to pass that knowledge on to future collectors of these coins, and I'm going to only encapsulate the coins that I really like for the date and grade. And so that 50 years from now, 100 years from now, collectors of future generations who own one of these coins will know that it's passed my scrutiny and that it's a really nice coin for the date and grade. It's pretty much that simple,
Right.
I just something I want to pass on other than writing books.
Right. It basically gives every collector the opportunity to, look, I know you and I see you on set, we film. I could take a coin and go, hey, Rick, what do you think of this one? Do you like it? This basically gives every collector that opportunity. They see it in that holder.
Right.
They know you already went, yeah, I do like it.
I remember about 10 years ago, you showed me a 63P. It had been graded 6.5 full bell line. And I looked at it with my glasses and I said, well, Jack, it's not really a full bell line. They overgraded it. I'm not going to mention the grading service, but it wasn't a full bell line coin, And you get that a lot, coin, and you look at it and they, it's like having a full head standing Liberty quarter. It's not full head, or,
Right.
you know what I mean? It's you do get that a lot.
Right. Right. It happens. Well, this has been great, Rick. You are just a wealth of knowledge. I'm so glad you're my partner, and I get to be half of the Coin Guys with you. It's a real treat and a real honor.
It's been an adventure.
It's been an adventure, and I'm glad that we get to eat cheeseburgers together. This is
Thank you, Colleen.
This is almost as good as having a bag of coins from the European Bank Hoard, but I'm not going to say it's better. I think I take the bag. I think I take the bag of coins first, but cheeseburgers a pretty good second. Not bad.
Dave was talking to me about doing a trip to the Smithsonian or to the Philadelphia Mint, Jack.
I'm looking forward to it. I did get to go to Ike's house when I went to Gettysburg. That was pretty exciting. That was really cool to kind of be standing in his office where he worked. It was amazing. But I'm looking forward to more of those trips, Rick. So before I conclude the show, it's customary here we give a donation of $1,000 to a charity of our guest's choice. And today I understand you selected the Wounded Warriors Project, which is a great charity. Do you want to give a second on why you selected the Wounded Warriors?
Because it is a great charity, and here you have men and women who've been willing to sacrifice their very lives for their country, and in this case they've survived, but with serious injuries. Right. And this is just one way to show our appreciation to help these people out who've been willing to give so much so we could have the freedoms we have. It's something I'm grateful for every single day. Every single day that I'm alive. I mean, we owe so much to the men and women who are there for us, in our country.
Right. Well, it's a great cause, and we're honored to be able to help support it with you. So, thanks again for joining me here. Really appreciate it, Rick. It's been great. This has been a lot of fun, and I think it's been really informative for people.
I hope everyone's enjoyed it. And again, if they have any questions, we're here.
Sounds great. Well, thank you, Rick, and thank you everyone else for joining me today.
Jack.
Sure, thanks. And thanks everybody else for joining me here on Coin Snacks with Jack. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel. We are streaming every week on Facebook and YouTube at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, so tune in for your weekly dose of numismatics. And don't forget about our lunch special going till 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. That's 5% off all We the People Franklin halves and aspirational Kennedy half dollars that you heard. These are all coins that Rick looked at personally and said, yeah, I like it. I like Ike. I like this Kennedy. I like this Franklin. So check out those We the People Franklins, aspirational Kennedy holders, 5% discount at rarecollectiblestv.com, but it's only for the next couple of hours. We'll see you next week for another exciting episode. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for watching Coin Snacks with Jack. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you never miss an episode of Coin Snacks. Visit us at rarecollectiblestv.com.